Yay! Oh man, months into this, you'd think we would have figured it out. Thank you for your patience, everyone. I'll go ahead and get started then. So what we're going to do, we've got myself from Amanda Sandoval's office, Councilwoman Sandoval. We've got Liz Weigle from Community Planning and Development, and I also do know that Jason Horniak, who's the president of the Chaffee Park RNO, is also attending. So after we run through this, we're all open for any questions in a Q&A session. So what I'm going to talk about with this presentation right now is first walk you all through why this is happening. We know this is a first. It's the first large rezoning proposal of its kind for a whole neighborhood in the city, as opposed to the property by property rezonings we've seen over the past decade, really. So we'll talk about how this came to be, what Councilwoman Sandoval's office has done in terms of process and outreach, and then we'll specifically talk about the proposal for this new zone district, which is to create an ESUB1 zone district, which ties into this whole proposal. And then we'll have time for Q&A. So for background, about a year and a week and a half ago, Councilwoman Sandoval took office. And pretty quickly after that, we had our first introductory meeting with the Chaffee Park RNO. And at that meeting, the first thing we discussed really was an idea from the neighborhood to have the councilwoman sponsor a large legislative rezoning for ADUs. And I know Jason could probably talk more about this later, but there was already pretty wide interest in building ADUs in the neighborhood, and neighbors had come together and talked about some of the barriers that they were encountering and realized that it would be advantageous to have this be a legislative rezoning, since there were so many people interested. Of course, that $1,000 rezoning fee that comes with it. So our office was happy to help them look into this. And we found that Chaffee Park is a really great candidate for ADUs. ADUs are already allowed in roughly 25% of the city. But as you can see in this map here, Chaffee Park has a really, really high rate of home ownership already, which is a bit different from a lot of other neighborhoods in the city. But it also does have a moderately high vulnerability to displacement score from Blueprint Denver. So this really does fit in well with how Blueprint Denver and the city policies look at ADUs as a tool for stabilizing residents, being able to provide a little bit of extra income to afford the rising costs of living in Denver, as well as providing homes for multi-generational families. There's a lot of families in Chaffee Park that would like to house older relatives, grandparents, or potentially younger children coming back from college, things like that. So over the next several weeks, we developed an outreach plan together with the RNO. And we decided we would do all materials bilingual in Spanish and in English. So the first thing that we did is we created an online survey, which served to gather public sentiment about this. That was also available in English and in Spanish. And then we have these print materials that were directed people towards filling out the survey, as well as telling them about town halls that we held, two in-person town halls in November. So down at the bottom here, you can see a flyer. This was sent to every single property owner who would be affected in the neighborhood. So not necessarily just residents, people who rent or living there, but actually we got the list of property owner addresses from the city's assessor office and emailed every single one of them postcards so that they could participate. We also were very, very lucky to have such a passionate and involved RNO. The picture here is from our pre-flyering meeting where in October, community members went out and went door to door with this larger one-pager here and just tried to talk to as many neighbors as possible and also get their feedback in case somebody couldn't go online to fill out the survey. They would be able to do it in person with the person at their door. So trying to reach as many people as absolutely possible. And then finally, this was all leading up to the two town halls that we held November 6th and 11th. So I'll talk a little bit about the feedback that we got because it was really interesting and we asked some detailed questions. So of course, the first biggest question was, do you support Chaffee Park rezoning to allow ADUs? And we provided a bit of background about what ADUs are. No, they're not commercial development, etc. So overall, we got 387 responses to our survey, and 66, roughly 2/3 of people were very strongly in support. We had only 16% that were a firm no, did not believe in rezoning. We also had the option for people to have other opinions. So you can see there's an 11% there of people who honestly, for one reason or another, just didn't really care. And we did allow people also to respond that they were undecided. But the direction from this was pretty clear. 2/3 of the community was very strongly in support of this rezoning. Our wonderful RNO president, Jason, is very handy with maps. And so he was kind enough to make this map that shows we got a pretty good range of responses from across the neighborhood. Of course, we would have loved to get every single person, but you can see here that the green yeses were very, very prominent.
Can you tell us how many flyers were distributed? That was a question from the chat.
Jason might be able to answer that.
I think it was between 13 and 1,400. We sent a flyer out to every address in the neighborhood within the boundaries of the neighborhood. So I think that's.
Did you hire a local company?
They did it personally. So well, there were 2 flyers. The councilman's office paid to mail flyers to every single property owner, and then that image from the previous slide was neighborhood volunteers who physically went door to door and handed out flyers. So we didn't pay people to do the flyering.
Hey, Jason, I'd be interested in hearing about what your plan looked like and how many people you had and that kind of thing.
Yeah, happy to take those questions. Maybe you guys can connect offline.
Will do.
So I wanted to highlight 2 other questions and feedback that we got from the community. We really did want to know how many, regardless of support, how many people did actually intend to build an ADU. So I will call attention to the fact that we got 300, almost 400 responses to the total survey, and you can see only 192 actually answered this question specifically. But this is an interesting breakdown of the majority of the people who answered this question. It's not something that's immediate. They thought that they might be interested in building an ADU sometime in the next 5 to 10 years. It wasn't feasible right away, but they were very excited about the possibility of doing it. Only 22% were, and that's 43 responses, were ready to go. They want to build an ADU as soon as possible. And also very revealing is that almost 20% there, people support ADUs, but honestly didn't have any intention to build one. They liked the concept, they liked the ability of their neighbors to build them. And we also asked, if you build an ADU, what would you use it for? Because we heard a lot of concerns about these, which I will discuss in a second. And this was also very interesting. So out of the 145 people who answered this, who did plan to build ADUs, the majority of them were going to use it as a guest house for visiting friends, visiting family. The second most common use was for a long-term tenant for income. And then below that was housing a family member. And at the very bottom was other office studio. That was a write-in option. But right above that is short-term rental. So it's interesting to see this because a lot of the main concerns about ADUs were that everyone was going to build them and just use them as short-term rentals. So it is interesting to see that that was actually pretty much the least common reason people wanted to build ADUs. So what did we do with the feedback we got? We did hear concerns from the community. We heard them through the survey. We heard them at the town halls. This is just a smattering of comments that there were comments we got because we put room for comments in the survey. And so luckily, many of these came from misunderstandings that it was going to allow people to build high rises or apartments or was tied into other things that weren't actually about ADUs. But there were definitely some very interesting concerns in here. And so The councilwoman, despite seeing that the survey indicated support, really wanted to do our due diligence. And so to address these concerns, we met with the following city agencies and also people in the private and nonprofit sector. We met with the city assessor to talk about tax assessments and what this would do to people's property taxes, because that was of great concern. And the outcome of that conversation was that the rezoning itself was not expected to have a large impact on property assessments. It's just not, it's such a small part of how they calculate those. And so we were comforted by that this rezoning itself wouldn't all of a sudden raise people's taxes there. It wouldn't have an undue negative effect for the neighborhood. We also reached out and talked directly to the fire department because we heard concerns about the neighborhood if more people came into it, there would be not enough services, that it would be too many homes for the fire department and for sewage and stuff like that to reach. So we went out and talked to those departments and they did not have any concerns. They said that they were very well prepared to deal with ADUs. It was nothing unusual. The neighborhood could definitely handle it. And then with also talking to the building department and parts of CPD, if there was a property where an ADU would not be appropriate, that gets caught in the, they would not be allowed to build it. There's, aside from this rezoning, there's individual review of setbacks and all the other zoning and building requirements for ADUs. We also talked to ADU experts, nonprofits in the area, and some developers, because we did also hear the concern that allowing this rezoning would bring in speculative development. And we heard very clearly that that was not going to be an issue. The return on investment for someone coming in and choosing to redevelop on a property, and because it was zoned to allow for an ADU, was just not something that the real estate market and developers do. It wasn't enough of a return on that investment. So it wasn't a concern from them. So after doing that research, Councilwoman Sandoval made the decision to move forward with this in mid-March. But we did take a bit of a pause before submitting the official application because of COVID. We did not want this to get lost in especially the first few months of just the chaos of that and the fact that we couldn't meet with people in person if people wanted to have one-on-one conversations. So after a few months went by, we finally decided to go forward, and the councilwoman directed me to submit the application on June 22nd, which brings us to the application, which we're here to discuss. So here's a map of Chaffee Park. It's all in the E, which is urban edge context area. It's all single unit, and we've got 3 different types of single unit. So the letters at the very end, just as a quick zoning primer, refer to average lot sizes in a neighborhood, and you'll see these throughout Denver. So the way that ADU rezonings go, in case you're not familiar with it, is that there's just a 1 added to the end. It is a different zone district, but all it does with that 1 at the end is it allows the ADU form in the back. So it's relatively straightforward for most of the neighborhood. You can see down here, the bulk of it is ESUDX. That just goes to ESUDX1. This little area here is ESUD. It just goes to ESUD1. But the problem that we faced with this turquoise area in the middle, which is currently zoned ESUB, is that ESUB1 doesn't exist, as an option in the menu of zone districts in the urban edge context, specifically this E. And this was actually brought up to us by a resident in this neighborhood who was upset and concerned that even if we did go through with all this rezoning, she was very passionate about building an ADU, and she realized that unless we looked into this, her whole neighborhood wouldn't be able to, or her whole section of the neighborhood wouldn't be able to, because it was missing basically the ability to get that ADU zone district. So now we're switching into some slides that I'm very grateful to Liz Weigle for preparing for us. This is from the city. So the text amendment we're talking about is the creation of the ESUB1 district. And we were excited that the planning department was very eager to create this district because it does fill in a much needed gap and fills city policies for helping ADUs become more available within the city. So all that this district does is it creates a district that would allow for accessory dwelling units in ESUB. It has the exact same form standards as the current ESUB. So you can't change it doesn't change anything about the primary house you're building. It just adds the ability to create that accessory dwelling unit in the back. And very importantly, it has to do with the minimum lot size required to build an ADU. Because currently in the rest of the neighborhood, you have to have at least 6,000 square feet. But in the ESUB area, the average lot size is 4,500 square feet. And so this brings that down just for that area to have a lower minimum, which is consistent with all the other SUB districts in the rest of the city. So just to summarize again, this would establish a new zone district, a new menu item from the zoning menu for the urban edge district. And then simply that would be part of this rezoning that's moving forward with the text amendment. So timeline so far, there is a public red line review draft for this ESUB1 district. It's posted on the Community Planning and Development website. Today, July 25th, we are bringing the summary to INC ZAP for any discussion. And from here on, it's all TBD. We do know, of course, this will go to planning board. There will be notification to registered neighborhood organizations, and then it will continue on through LUDI, council first reading, council public hearing. We do not have dates for those yet, but there will be notification. And given, of course, how involved the RNO is in all of this, we do hope that there will be great turnout at those hearings. So here's information, contact information for Liz, who's been our amazing planner shepherding this through. You can contact our office for Councilwoman Sandoval at district1@denvergov.org. And there's also more information about this at the Denver Gov website. But I will now stop talking and open this up for any discussion, any questions. Again, we've got Liz, we've got myself, and we've got Jason, the RNO president.
And I have one quick question.
You have a question here. If you have a question, if you could go ahead and raise your hand, that would be the best way for us to manage this, please.
How do I raise my hand?
Are you on the phone or are you
I'm on the phone with,
online?
I know I'm on the computer without video.
You're on the computer without video. You go ahead then. I'm not sure how you do that. I haven't seen that before.
Miles? You
Go
just
ahead.
go down to participants. Go down to participants, click on participants, and right there on the lower right-hand side, after you click on that, it says raise hand. It doesn't matter if you have video or not, as long as you're on the computer.
Okay, now I see it. So I've raised my hand. Can I go ahead?
Yep.
Ian?
Yes. Question from.
Yes, you can go ahead.
Okay, two back. How many total surveys were sent out?
So there
I
were.
was writing notes and I missed that.
Oh, no worries. So there's two. So do you mean how many survey responses? How many?
No, how many? Well, I'm just trying to establish how much of a response you did get. So how many total surveys were sent out, and then how many responses you get back in?
So probably the best way to get to that, we notified every single property owner. So Liz, do you remember how many doors?
I think it's about 1,400
Jason,
properties
if
that
he
are
has an
within
answer here
that
in the
area.
chat.
Jason?
Yeah, it's about between 1,300 and 1,400 people that received the survey by mail, and then a lot more received 2 flyers based on our door-to-door as well.
How many people responded to your postcard?
Looks like about 325, 350.
Well, we had almost 400 responses.
Okay, okay,
Yeah, so a little less than the third.
okay. And then the second one, could you go back to the slide that has the minimum lot square footage?
Let's see, this one?
There it is. Okay. Could you explain the last point there? Wait a minute. I've got to take this raising my hand window out of there.
Liz, would you be able to jump in on this one?
Sure. So the difference, so there's 3 zone districts that exist in Chaffee Park today that are single unit districts. And the ESUB has a minimum lot size of 4,500. So it's smaller lot size. Both the ESUD and ESUDX are 6,000 square foot minimum lots. And today our urban edge, which is the context that we use in the zoning code, doesn't have a ADU district that matches up with that 4,500 square foot minimum.
Okay, so
the proposal here is to create that ADU district. So keep that same minimum that's already allowed today, but allow the accessory dwelling unit.
Okay.
Smaller lot size.
Thank you. I was just trying to connect the dots. Thank you.
Sure.
My hand is down.
Does anybody else, I don't see any other hands up. Christine, I see you have a question in the chat, so I'll go to you next.
I think it was just answered. Are there 1,400 homes in the mapped area? Is that correct?
I think it's a little bit under that. Yeah, between
Okay.
like 1,350.
All right, so everybody was contacted twice, and then 350 to 400 responded. Okay, I got it. Thank you.
All right,
And
Cindy,
they were
I
actually
see you next.
just to jump in, we also send out postcards when applications are filed and before planning board. So people also got a notice when this application was filed recently, and they'll get another one before planning board.
We got those about 2 weeks ago. Thanks, Liz.
And did the council person's office send out those postcards?
We sent out the first wave of postcards. So we did a lot of beforehand work for this, and that's all of that. The second ones that Jason just mentioned, they got 2 weeks ago. That was sent by the planning department, and the next ones will also be sent by the planning department as part of the required notification process.
All right, Cindy Johnstone, I see your hand up.
Yes, I just want to clarify for myself. This, if this goes through, are there other ESUD ones in the city? And if so, this changes their ability to do ADUs. Does this affect the whole city or only the?
10 o'clock.
So we're not changing anything about the ESUD1 district. So there are other areas mapped that way. This is creating a new ESUB1 district and then proposing to map it in Chaffee Park. It's not mapped anywhere else because it's new. It does mean that another area, another parcel could potentially apply for a rezoning to map the new zone district, assuming it's approved. But right now that district doesn't exist anywhere in the city since it's new.
Okay, the question then is, if another area requests that zoning, then the ability to do an ADU would go with it. Yes or no?
Correct.
Correct. If that is an approved rezoning, then they would be able to build an accessory dwelling unit in that district.
And the rezoning process, this is what the rezoning process is, correct? The going through all these steps.
Yes.
Correct. And it requires council approval.
Okay, thanks.
All right, Miles, you're up next. You there, Miles? All right, we'll go to Tally Lawing.
Oh,
Hey.
sorry. Can you hear me now?
Oh, is that you, Miles?
Yeah, sorry.
All
The
right, go ahead,
computer
Miles. Tally,
was
we'll get you right
muted.
after Miles, okay?
Okay, couple of questions. So from what Cindy just said, have you guys calculated what other parts of the city that this new zone district creation will impact or opens this up, the ADUs? And then another quick question about the survey. Did you guys track your survey responses per property, or is it just gross number of responses? Because I would be interested in knowing how many property owners responded per address. And then the next question is, did you have any pushback? And in the end, how many people were resistant to the ADUs?
I could answer the first one. Well, I can't answer it, but it's something we could calculate. I don't know that we've done that yet. Essentially calculating how much of the city is already zoned ESUB, that single unit zone district. That is something we could follow up with you on, giving you the calculation. I don't know that offhand.
And then in terms of the survey, we are able to remove duplicates. So we were able to make sure that that people could not answer it twice. And we did ask if they were an owner or a renter, and the majority of the people that responded were owners, not renters.
We also did accept survey responses from renters because they do live in our neighborhood, and we counted them as a part of that.
Yes, that's a good point. But yes, the majority of responses were from owners. We did track that. And then per your last question, I think that the earlier slides that I went over pretty thoroughly discussed the pushback that we got and the work that we did to address them. So do you have any specific questions about any of the concerns that were raised or how we researched them?
Well, after going through this process, do you have any resistance at this point, or are people pretty much on board with this planning change?
We still have some people who are against it. I mean, we're never going to get to 100% consensus. And the people we have heard from who continue to push back on it are people we've had conversations with for the past year. They're community members, and I know Jason's talked with them many times. So there definitely is still some resistance, but it is certainly, it's a small fraction of the community.
Okay, do you have a rough guess of that fraction?
Per the survey results, that's all we can say. Was it 18%? But in terms of ongoing opposition, there really is there's one gentleman who's been extremely vocal against it, and a couple of others who have reached out with concerns, but have not said that they're vehemently against it. But there seems to be, I don't know, Jason, maybe you could discuss that a little bit more since you're on the ground.
To be honest, we haven't heard much opposition since we were knocking on doors. Perhaps I expected to hear more from people once they received the CPD mail out that we got a couple weeks ago, but it's been quiet since. I suppose we'll probably hear more from them at the council hearing, but it's been radio silence on the negative side since last fall.
And the resistance.
We're going to take two more questions because we're almost there, Miles.
Yeah. Allison Torvik asked if they could put
Tally was next, and then Allison, and then I think we're going to have to cut this off to go to the next topic, y'all.
Mm-hmm.
Hi, thanks everybody for your time. Can you speak towards the time frame of integration of this type of amendment when and if the support was gathered from the community? It then of course goes through the council review process. Can you speak towards your ideal time frame for integration of something like this if it was to be approved?
Liz, I'm gonna shoot that over to you.
Yeah, so our typical rezoning process is about 4 to 6 months is our typical, like what we usually say. I'd say with this, we don't have the dates yet, but it's probably before the end of the year that this should be heading to council. It's already been filed, as you know, we did not receive a number of comments on the kind of our first round of review. So it's pretty close to being scheduled for planning board. So it becomes kind of a matter of scheduling and finding those dates. So that's probably a little over a year from when this process started in terms of reaching out to the community and doing those surveys.
Thank you very much.
Last
Allison
question.
Torvik, that's you last then.
Could you just flip back to the three colors of the area that's actually in question? We're only talking about this like greenish teal area right here, right?
The ESUB, all of the colors here are being rezoned to allow ADUs, but specifically the text amendment to create a new district to allow ADUs is just for this kind of different looking layout teal section, yes.
Terrific, thanks, that's all.
For sure. And I am happy if anyone has further questions. We have a bunch of materials we've created for this, and I know CPD has recently put together a FAQ sheet. So very happy. I can put my personal email address in the chat. If anyone wants to reach out and have more conversations about this, I would love to talk.
Tally, did we skip you? I'm sorry. I see you put your hand up a couple times here.
Yeah, I'm good to go. Thank you for checking in. I'll try to get rid of that.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you both, Naomi and Liz, for coming today.
Well,
Thank you for having us.
Thank you, everyone, and thank you for your thoughtful questions. Again, happy to continue talking about this offline. All right, I'm going to give up sharing control.
Great. Okay. Let's see. Okay. So Ian, I'm going to go, let me just see if I can share the PowerPoint again. Okay, so I'm going to just talk for a few minutes because I have a feeling that most people are interested in where we go from here after last Saturday's meeting, at which we approved a resolution with some discussion of possible amendments, but that didn't happen. So first of all, I want to make sure if you don't have your name in the sign-in, please put it in. If you're on the phone, please tell Ian in the chat who you are so we can get your name. And I think you all know how to use the raise hand. We already had this first section. Okay, so ground rules. Ian will do one speaker at a time. Please be respectful of all opinions because we have a lot of opinions and a lot of neighborhoods represented on this phone call. As you know, I'm sorry about the late posting to the INC website. It's my fault. I was supposed to do that immediately after last Saturday's meeting and I had grandchildren arriving, so I didn't. It took a while and I apologize, but it's up now on the INC website. I have a tentative timeline. The way we're guessing is the earliest this could move forward is September 21st, but it is going to planning board on August 19th unless our resolution and what we discussed today is successful in making any changes to the schedule. So that's what we are anticipating at this point. I have some other slides and many other things to discuss. And I also have another PowerPoint to put up with the overview from CPD if people would like to see that. But now that you've all received the review draft and had time to look at that PowerPoint on your own, I'm thinking we don't need to do that. And we can discuss where do we go from here. The problem with our resolution last week, and in my opinion, the problem with all RNOs who've been listening to this over several months as it evolved, we have to look at the final package and we have to weigh in on the final package. And I'm not sure that's been done. So how about if would you like me to go over the main points, the 3 congregate area, the household definition and residential care on the slide presentation, I can do that. Otherwise, we can just move on to discussion. So let me just show
I think you should put it up there, Christine.
Okay, great. Here.
Also, I see a really great idea here from Lucia,
Oh,
from Baker, to put our neighborhoods behind our names, just so we can see where people are from, kind of like we would get from around the city. And Joel, I see your hands up there, so we'll get to you first once we get to that part.
Okay, let me share. Let me stop the other share and start this one. Okay.
And Allison, put in the chat how you can go and change your name. Thank you, Allison.
Okay. So I picked just the very, very first slide, that summary that CPD put up. This is their overview of why it was done and their view of why it needs to, why it's more urgent than ever that it be passed right now. And I know there's a lot of pressure. I've received a couple of calls like, why would you want to delay something in light of the evictions? And there's a lot of discussion that should be had about that. But I'm going to point out that Robin Kanish took, well, 8 or 9 months on the tiny homes, which was a fraction of this. And that certainly got a lot of discussion and a lot of attention, and several items in here need that kind of attention. So here is the overview. Should I go to full screen? Okay, there we go. Okay. This is on the household regulation. Permit up to 5 adults and any number of relatives per that chart that you all know by now. 1,800, any household, any unit under 1,800 square feet can have 5 unrelated adults plus any relatives. And then for each additional 200 square feet, you can add another unrelated adult up to 10. And the city puts forward that this is a reduction from the 8 that was originally approved by the Group Living Advisory Committee. But I want to point out that the 8 only allowed minor children. So by going to the 5 plus any extended relatives of any of those 5 or 6 or 7 or 8 or 9 or 10, there really is no cap in this provision. There will be new off-street parking requirements if you have a dwelling unit with more than 6 adults, and that's in a chart. This is something Ian and I had asked for several months. What other regulations will reassure people that we are able to live in orderly neighborhoods? And some people have brought up the complaint system that exists now and the lack of satisfaction among many Denver residents with complaints being addressed in terms of number of people, weeds, campers, etc. Here are the 3 groups of code that were given to us. So you guys can look at that. Hold on a second. There we go. I was just going to do, did I skip congregate living? Yeah. Hold on, I'm really not able to see everything right here. Okay. So congregate living, and this is interesting because congregate living is not being extended to every zone district. Although there are some overlaps in terms of density with the residential care, but they're being limited to multi-unit, mixed-use, Main Street, and campus, and includes rooming and boarding houses, dormitories, tiny home villages, and SROs, or single room.
Christine?
Yeah.
Christine, there's a request in the chat here to stay on the slides a little longer.
Okay.
And they also appear to be zoomed in on your screen.
Could you say that again? Is that okay?
That's zoomed in. I can't see the whole page, at least on my screen. And they're asking that you stay on them longer because you're just clicking through them while people are trying to read.
Okay, yeah, and I guess I am assuming that everybody's read this and wants to discuss, so I'm sorry. This is the very short 8-page summary. There's also a much longer summary, and then there's 174 pages of the code revisions, which I have read in great detail. Takes quite a while.
All right, Christine, do you have anything else you want to say before we go to questions or comments?
So this one, this is the residential care slide. And I just want to point out that this has been evolving for several months. It isn't, there are arbitrary numbers throughout in here. The number 8, the number 5, all those numbers are chosen. There is no law that says we have to land on 5, we have to land on 8. There is no law that says for residential care, we have to have these 4 categories. As a matter of fact, until January, there were only 2 categories for residential care, small and large, and shelters and community corrections were always considered large. So this is a real change that was landed on, but as you see, the very large residential cares, what you would call a prison, are not, I guess, or a very large residential care building of 100 are not included in the SU-TU-RH areas. So, okay, is that enough, Ian? I don't really, I feel like people have read all this and have questions and have comments and have ideas on what can be done and whether this is sufficient, and we've had enough discussion about it. Oh, and I did have, hold on, let me just put up our resolution again. And,
well, I'm just going to take a moment here just to say some of the comments after I've read the whole thing as well.
Okay.
And I just want to start by saying I do think that the bicycle parking requirements need to go up for these congregate housing. Congregate housing is going to have very small units, and if our plans are calling for people to get out of their vehicles, then I think we need to provide the parking so they don't have to have it in their own apartments. And then Joel, you'll be first, so we'll go to you now.
Yeah, I just, I'm not going to weigh in on this. As you know, I serve on the planning board, so I'll just wait to hear from everybody as that comes through. But I had a process question here. The you know, CPD always comes to INC when there's a text amendment, as they just did for adding a new zone district to support ADUs. This is a pretty big and important text amendment, and the text of it just came out to react to the changes based on previous feedback. I'm surprised that CPD isn't here to speak to that. Could you tell us about how that transpired?
I can speak to that. We've had CPD speak, and we've heard him in many R&Os, and Andrew Webb, that is, and he did reach out Monday of this week to say, would you like me to come? And we said, we declined because I think people have strong opinions and thoughts and ideas and want to discuss this, and we find that and so we declined. Is that sufficient? And we can have him for a special meeting. If this body would like to have him, we'll hold a special meeting again, and he can answer questions again.
Okay, I think we'll go back to questions here. I see Tonya Wilson.
Yes, hello. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Hi, thank you so much. I've never attended one of these meetings before. I just heard about this meeting last week and I was excited to participate. I have been very vocal about my opposition to this proposal. I've written to Andrew Webb, I've engaged my city council person, I've attended meetings, I've had my comments mocked and dismissed, including publicly on Twitter by Councilwoman DeBaca. So I am happy to have a forum where I can share my thoughts and have them listened to. So thank you so much. I do feel like there's unbalanced representation on the committee. They have been working on this for over 2 years. I don't believe that the neighborhoods have been properly represented on the committee. And right now the committee's trying to cram this down our throats and dismissing all of the opposition that they've received. And now they're trying to say it's, has to be passed right away. I think that if they don't want to believe the negative feedback they've received on this, then they should put this to a vote of the voters and not the city council, because they keep saying or dismissing the negative feedback they're receiving. The issue that I have the biggest concern about is what you were showing on slide 7. Community corrections are not appropriate for single family neighborhoods. And if you go back to slide 7, you'll see that up to 10 incarcerated individuals could be living in houses next door to families and the elderly, and that is insane. And there is no space requirement, there is no density requirement, and there is no community meeting required according to this proposal. And I find that totally inappropriate. So if you look at type 1, you can have up to 10 guests in a single family house, no spacing requirements, no density requirements, and no community information meeting. And I don't care who it is that's living in there. I do not want criminals living next door. And I believe most homeowners and renters in single family neighborhoods feel the same. Thank you for listening.
Thank you for joining in on your first meeting. If you're not on the email subscription list, you can drop it in the chat, and then you can stay up to date about all of our meetings.
I appreciate that.
The next person I have here is Sherry Way.
And can we try to keep them to 3 minutes? Yeah.
Sorry, had to unmute myself. Good morning, everyone. I have read the text amendments and do have some technical comments, but I don't want to take up the whole entirety of the meeting. I will send those out. Christine, I'll send them to you and let you distribute them. I haven't yet sent them to West Washington Park Neighborhood Association, to our Land Use Transportation Committee, or to our Zoning Committee, so I'll need to do that. But my primary comment is the timeline. I agree, Christine, you mentioned that the tiny villages was worked on for 8 months by Councilwoman Kanich, and this is going extremely quickly. And what's in the text amendments themselves matters, not just the summaries. And they are technical, and I am a lawyer, and I do real estate work, so I'm accustomed to reading these types of things. They're quite technical, and I think adequate time to really understand them, digest them, and have our questions about them answered is very important. And secondly, I think we all need time, once the people in our respective organizations have had an opportunity to do that, to reach out to our committees and our residents about this. And that's a time-consuming process for those of us who deal with community involvement. And I don't think the present timeline allows adequate time to do that.
Okay, I'm gonna go to the phones now. Is there anyone on the phone that would like to make a comment? Okay, the next person I see is Robert Schmid. Okay, we'll go to the next one, Adam Estroff from Baker.
Wait, sorry, I was muted. This is just a quick question.
Who is this?
This is Robert. I was on
okay.
mute. I'm sorry. Is INC still collecting comments from RNOs that will be collected and forwarded to CBD?
We'd love to have them.
Certainly, we can get them all packaged together and submitted together if people would like us to do that.
Okay, great, because we're still considering this with regards to our board, and we're going to have something within the next week or so to be able to send upstream, if you're still accepting it.
Yes, I believe we'll still be submitting comments as we go.
Are you also submitting directly to Andrew Webb, who will compile them for the planning board packet?
Yes, we're going to submit it to Andrew, as well as the planning board and to our council person.
Thank you.
Okay, Adam, then you're next.
Okay, thanks for having me, guys. Sorry, my lighting's a little off. I just wanted to comment on the community corrections piece. So that's in here and, you know, getting pushed in this package because City Council and many of your council members, many of all our council members voted to get rid of the contracts with Geo Group last year. And so that caused our halfway houses to close. And these are places for people who have served their time and are re-entering to society. And so we don't have enough of them in the city. There's not a way to build enough of them now because of the zoning. And so I think that, you know, if we supported our council members in that vote, you know, we need to kind of finish this job and close that loop. And if we do as a society really believe in rehabilitation, you know, I think we need to kind of welcome that, you know, near to us, you know, in our neighborhoods. Pushing people out into industrial areas or into areas of high crime and poverty isn't going to help them, you know, kind of get back on their feet. So, you know, I just wanted to give that comment on it. I think that, you know, we really should think about this. And this has been going on for 2 years, this process. And, you know, all over the country, there are groups that are able to input delay into the process. And I just think, you know, if 2 years isn't enough, is 3 years enough? Is 4 years enough? You know, these debates have been going on for a long time. And I think, you know, I think this is a good proposal that will bring us in line with a lot of peer cities like Seattle. So that's just the part I wanted to give. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Adam. I'm just going to take a moment here to speak up to that as well. You know, I think coming from the Black, Indigenous, people of color communities that I work with on a regular basis, there are many people who have been incarcerated as part of the system that people are pushing back on in unfair and unjust ways. There is still notice for people who are sexual predators. That will not change. But if somebody went to jail for, you know, drug possession, like many people have, for example, you know, that's not always the same kind of criminals I think that people need to be worried about. And I also agree with Adam about when can time be served. I think it's important that we think about those dynamics, especially since if we're calling for more diversity in the zoning process, I think it's also being accepting to people when they're coming out of the system. Lee Raiders, you're next, and then Jason Horniak.
Thank you guys for hosting this to a broad group of people. And I can't agree more that there is a desperate need to consider these options for people and for us to consider, you know, bringing more equity to our city. On the other hand, I don't believe that that there, even though this process may have gone on for 2 years, it is so intensive in terms of the changes that I don't believe that handling all of these together makes sense. And I know that that was part of the INC resolution that was adopted last week, but I believe that some of the discussion in that meeting does not, in fact, reach what was discussed. It's just that the resolution could not be modified. So I am going to post in a moment just a proposed resolution that I would like folks to consider. I have talked to several people in different RNOs and to numerous people in Cherry Creek North who just really don't understand the impact of these several elements, especially during a pandemic when the ability to really get together with people and make them understand these changes is so important. And I think even the Q&A, which is intended to really help, pushes some of these questions to, well, there are other provisions that take care of that. And but you know, there's a total of 10 and there's this and that, but it is so confusing that to me, it's just too fast. And I would love to consider these conversations in a way that really reaches citizens and allows each council person to have real input. We discussed this at the Cherry Creek Steering Committee with Councilperson Hines. He agrees that it is something that the District 10, in our case, really needs to be brought together. You've got a lot of different neighborhoods within that district, and a lot of people still are very, very, I don't want to say ignorant, they just don't know, and they haven't had the full opportunity to understand this. So that's my comment. I will be proposing a resolution along those lines. Thank you.
Lou, can you send whatever you're planning on presenting over to Christine and email it so we can try to get it up on a screen if you're going to make a resolution later? And then Jason, you're next, and then Trisha Schmid.
Hi, Jason Hornick here. You heard from me about the Chaffee Park ADU thing. Thank you all for having us and hearing us out on that. So I'd like to speak on the group living as someone who hasn't always been an R&O president. When I first moved to this city 13 years ago, I lived in a group living situation, though illegally. I had 3 roommates when we first moved here directly out of college, and that was the only way we could afford to live in this city. And after doing that, we all ended up buying into this economy, getting good jobs. Some of us are R&O presidents, all of us are homeowners, and that was the only way that we had to be able to get into this. And now, not only that, but as an R&O president and as a citizen of this city, I want to know why we as citizens would tolerate any language in our city charter that tells us with whom or with whom we cannot live with, as long as we're following health and safety ordinances. If I can live with 8 different people that are my cousins, why can't I live with 8 different people that are my friends? Now, I understand that's down to 5 now, but to me, this is an American rights issue. We're allowing the city to tell us with whom we cannot live on our own property. I don't see how we can tolerate that kind of language at all in our city charter.
Okay.
Here.
So Trisha next, and then Miles.
Hi, I sat in on the meeting, the INC meeting last time, and I'm sitting in on this one, and I have to say, I just find it so sad that this issue is so divisive, because to me, what works well for the city overall works well for each and every one of our RNOs and neighborhoods. And yes, we can have disagreements. These issues are so critical and so important to the city overall. And I think it is important that we all sort of come together. And for that, I think Sherry's probably right. We need time to do that. We need time to be able to talk to each other, not in a way that's combative and divisive, and but in a constructive fashion, which means we need our council people to get out there and talk to the constituents within their neighborhoods. They need to educate them. They need to have true discussion. And then they need to seek compromises. I mean, my goodness, that's what makes, everything work well. And I think if there's, such a strong segment of people who are really against this and such a strong people who are really for it, there's a middle ground here. And we need time to figure out what that middle ground might be. I don't know how long that takes, but, I see, Lucia, you've had to, we've already compromised, and I appreciate that you feel that way, but I know that plenty of people who I've spoken to who didn't even know about this issue. And maybe that's their own, not being involved publicly as much as they should be. But having said that, how Chaffee handled their ADUs, I think is remarkable, and I commend them. And I don't understand why we can't go the same way. It's transparent, it's inclusive. They reached out to everybody. Yes, it's a much smaller neighborhood, but there is no reason that each council person could not do that on their own within their own neighborhoods. And then the council people could come together and try to resolve whatever, disputes there still are. That's just my view. And I just find it sad that somehow we're just so divisive with each other. It saddens me. And again, I think what's good for Denver overall, if we all compromise, is good for the whole, is good for every individual neighborhood. That's it.
Okay. Okay, thank you. Miles, you're next, and then Cindy Sestrick.
Yeah, thank you. I agree with and support what Tricia said. This is complicated and has got some far-reaching impacts. And I almost wish this would be brought to a vote, because then you'd have pros and cons. And then I'm also concerned about the unintended consequences of commercializations of SROs. But my questions are more technical. I noticed in reviewing it, I wasn't able to get through all of it, but they're actually changing the vehicles per household. Can you tell me, does anyone know if they're actually changing it from what the current allowances are currently? And then my second question is, it's about the residential care. Are they able to assemble lots? So in a neighborhood, they could choose maybe a lower income neighborhood and then start purchasing homes to assemble a larger and larger lot for building this type of a care facility? Does anyone know?
Do you mean assemble smaller lots to get to the, you're talking about the up to 40 category, the type 2, and you want to know if you can assemble lots that are smaller than 12,000 square feet to get to 12,000 square feet? Or are you asking if you can
Correct.
do 12,000 square feet?
Or even in the future, if it was lower priced properties, assembling even a larger lot so they could continue to grow in a neighborhood, whether they wanted it or not.
I don't know. I'm afraid to say. So.
I don't know the answer to that question, but we can submit that question to Andrew Webb.
Yes. And somebody on the may already know. But.
And then he had a second question or a first question.
The parking.
Yeah, about vehicles allowed per dwelling unit. It looks like there's some changes that have been made. I'm just wondering, it looks like it's citywide. So is that changing the existing allowable vehicles per dwelling unit?
I don't know that answer either. I can go offline and look, but I'm going to put that in my the parking lot as this
Oh, Christine.
I'm afraid to.
So Miles, we'll do our best to get answers to those questions for everyone.
Okay, no, my concern is then this is in here and it's changing citywide and people have no idea that they've changed this requirement across the city. That would be my.
We do, I agree with you. This needs to be discussed with, sort of in fine detail. And I don't think we can do that today, but we could do that in a work group if people are interested in going through page by page. And then with Andrew, I would be willing, I think that would be extremely useful. I jotted down about 40 sections that I want to discuss, but we don't have the ability to do that here. But I think your questions are excellent. A lot of this has citywide impact, and I agree with you. People don't know that.
No. Okay. So I see Cindy Sisek and then Stefan Epler.
Hi. You can hear me now?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, good. My concerns are this is too fast of a process. There's too many things in here to continue on that do conflict with one another. If you go to the page, at a glance, proposed household regulations, that first bullet point that says 5 unrelated adults and any number of relatives, aren't we back into the same mess we're in now, proving who's related and who's not related? That doesn't seem to be cleared up in all of this. And any unrelated adults for every 200 additional feet, that one concerns me. As to the assessor's office that insists that many houses are multifamily houses, when now the use, and has been for the last 10 years, have been single family houses. And to get that changed, it is not easy to do. So I think there's many details, as Miles said, that need to be hashed out before unintended consequences are put into an ordinance that's hard to change or into the charter. So I vote to slow down and possibly pass the, I always forget the word, the congregate living part, and let's get that going, and take out the household regulations part and discuss it further with more people involved. Thanks.
Okay. I see here in the chat talking about this proposed resolution that Lou Raiders put up here. Lou, I see a lot of components here, including the bundling and specific outreach in our communities, in particular people of color. That we passed that last week, totally through the Board of Delegate, or the representation of delegates, and so perhaps there's a piece here related to COVID that was in there, but I'm not sure what answer today because it's
Ian, that was last week before we had the draft. They can dismiss what we passed last week as not having been written and created after the July 17th posting of the final review draft. That would be one reason to do something else.
In addition, you know, I do think there are some nuanced differences, but, you know, I'm a recently retired lawyer, as many of the folks are on this call, I think. So I can see some differences, but that was a delegate. This is allowing people who, we tried to get this, this call information out to everyone, not just delegates. And I think what we are trying to do is to make sure that we have input. I think, you know, those of you who know me know how much I fight for equity, and it is, I think, really unfortunate that there are comments like, you know, racist put out there. This needs to be an education process, and maybe the debundling really means that we go ahead with a portion of this and look harder at other portions, and then really answer the questions about, well, there are other provisions in the code that address that. Well, those of us who know that you can get into a rabbit hole when you look at that, people need to understand the way that those will be implemented. So what is the enforcement mechanism? And I am all for making changes along these lines. I am not for making changes on a citywide basis that have not been fairly communicated and considered by residents. And I agree that there are some similarities, but again, this is coming from others, maybe not just those who are delegates, to go to our council people.
I don't think I understand that last part. We did send the approved resolution over to council, but I'm open to, if you want to present this again, of course, we'll follow through with the procedure. The next person I see here is Cindy Sestrick and then Stefan. And you want me to put you back on the list, Lou? After this, if you just raise your hand, I'll get you back in the list to present it, if that's what you want to do.
Okay. I mean, I would just consider right now that it is a motion to, and of course, if people would like to modify that in any way, I think the motion by Chad has been seconded. So now we can take comments on it. Unlike in the delegate meeting, we didn't have any ability to comment on it. This proposal invites comments so people can be comfortable. If we need to get more specific, that's fine.
Okay, Christine, do we want to entertain this motion, or can we get to these last three people and then go to that? Would you be amenable to that, Lou?
Oh, sure. I think everyone should be heard, and anybody who thinks that that there should be some changes to this to meet the specific comments. There have been a lot of comments along these same lines made today, and in order to respect all of those, we really should let everybody comment on the language.
Yeah, Ian, I'll get in line to raise my hand, but I want to hear the other people and I can't see everybody's.
Okay, well, it's Cindy and then Stefan Epler, and then I see this, it's just titled Built.
Bill T. Yeah.
T, is that what it is? Okay.
Yeah. Hi, my name is Bill Channer. I'm from Cherry Creek East. I support Lou Rader's comments, and also Patricia Smith's. I think I have a lot of the same concerns about the proposal as stated. It's very complicated. People haven't been given the time to thoroughly review it. There are a lot of things that are confusing to me, and I think to others, in terms of exactly what might happen. I'm very concerned about enforcement of issues. I don't like the idea of requiring neighbors to inform on other neighbors as a mechanism for solving issues. If there's a problem, I think it's very, very important that we look at the concerns some people have expressed about companies from outside of Denver coming in and buying housing under this regulation in an effort to make a profit by renting out to more people. That in the end could raise the cost of housing in some neighborhoods rather than lower it. At the same time, I'm very cognizant that these are urgent issues and that Denver needs to resolve them. So I hope the city opens this up. And I think we should make sure that the city opens this up to wider discussion and clarifies some of the issues and resolves some of the issues relative to potential enforcement of problems and correction of problems that might occur under this proposal. Thank you.
Okay, then we're going to go to Cindy Sestrick. You've been waiting.
Ian, I already talked.
Oh, I already got you. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Steven Epler, my apologies.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I have several concerns. First of all, I agree that the group living statutes need to be revised concerning unrelated adults. I have concern about the overrepresentation of special interests on the committee. The city has been involved with this for a long time without adequate community representation. There's still widespread community ignorance throughout Denver. I think the whole thing needs more review of the debundled individual components. I think the individual components need to be considered separately and discussed. And particularly the residential care component, which I think is actually the easiest to approach, and the area in which there's probably more widespread community agreement. Also, there needs to be a lot more discussion about the total number of residents permitted. Currently, the limits exceed those established by the UN on acceptable density. There are many, many unresolved issues and that can have profound implications with unintended consequences. And lastly, if this affects the zoning code throughout the city, I strongly feel it needs to be put to a vote. That concludes my comments.
I just want to answer a comment here in the chat. Joe here was talking about renters' rights and ensuring about slumlords. Basically, a rental registry, which came through in our last one, is something that would help protect renters from circumstances like that. And then also we'd have to strengthen renters' rights at the state level.
So Ian, I want a couple things. I've now heard, I think, 2 people sort of make another suggestion, maybe an amendment to the proposed resolution or maybe a separate resolution, that this be put to a vote of the people. So the people who discuss that might consider drafting a separate resolution now, if that's what they intend to do, because I've heard it a few times. And I want to address Allison's comment about, isn't this representative government hashing it out over 2 years? I have a tremendous amount of information on the process itself, which had 48 appointees, only 10 of whom lived in neighborhoods. 6 of the 11 city council districts had no representation. Most of them, as has been said, represented either the community corrections industry, Geo, Core Civic, who I know bowed out, but they were on the group, assisted living companies. There were many, many special interests. Queen City Co-op, which wants to get the definition of the household changed so that for their business or their co-op. Those people were invited to join. And in the end, and this is just mind-boggling, I think I said it last week, at the last group living meeting, there were 20 of the 48 in attendance. 17 voted, and it included 7 votes from people who are either 3 are on the planning board, 2 are council members, and 2 others are city staff. One who runs corrections, Greg Morrill, and one who, Chris Connor. So to say that this was representative government forming this proposal is simply not the case. We haven't done that.
I see Katie Fisher has her hand up.
Hi, this is Katie Fisher. I'm confused what we're trying to do now. I see before me on my screen proposed resolution. Is this in addition to the INC delegation resolution that was going to be sent, or is this changing what the delegates of INC did last week? Could this get clarified? Thank you.
It would be in addition to the resolution from last week, simply because the planning board will probably dismiss INC's delegate resolution as having been based on drafts of this proposal that came out previous to the Friday night, right before our meeting last Friday. The official review draft came out. It can very easily say, well, that vote was not based, and it's true, it was not based on a review of the new draft. So it's in addition.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, I see Adam has his hand up again. Go ahead, Adam.
Hey guys. Yeah, I mean, I think that, you know, I appreciate the call for delay. You know, I do just, look, I really just want to highlight that there's a lot of power that groups like this have to input delay into the process. And I think, you know, if you guys do want to push forward with this, there should be some acknowledgement of the eviction crisis of the 100,000 people in Denver who are at risk. So, you know, maybe, you know, allowing that co-op stuff, but it's just, this has been kind of frustrating for me to hear, because I know lots of people who've participated in hundreds of hours of work about this, who have heard, you know, really vicious comments from people opposed to this. You know, I've seen Andrew Webb's children be called into question at public meetings. So, you know, this has been a really, really heated, but I hope that you guys can understand that there will be a very urgent need for folks to be able to double up in the short term. So I'm not a voting member, but that's all I have to say.
With the delay characterization, it's not delay if something hasn't been done thoroughly. There are mistakes in here. I'm not going to go into them now.
I mean, frankly, like, I just feel that this is like an opportunity. You're just trying to like incorporate opposition, and like I understand that you're not in favor of these changes, but you know, is 4 years enough? Is 5 years enough? It just feels like that what we're hearing is that the appropriate amount of public input is opposition to the changes. And I'm getting really heated, so I'm going to stop. But you know, thank you so much for doing this meeting.
Okay, I see Lou Raiders has her hand back up.
Yeah, I just want to respond to that and say that the intent of this resolution was, as Chris said, to make sure that we engage with our council people to get this in front of people right now during a pandemic. I am not suggesting at all that we don't have immediate needs. I will also tell you that I don't think that there are a lot of people waiting to move in. Maybe you do until this is passed. If people are in crisis, they tend to have somebody that is going to take them in. And I don't think that they're waiting for this to pass to do that. It seems to me also that Governor Polis has done a tremendous job and urgency, and there are emergency measures that could be put in place in addition to hopefully getting some additional assistance from Washington. So, you know, which hopefully we can get pushed. And so I just want to reiterate that this is not simply a delay, Adam, and I certainly see the need. I just think the process is important, and connecting the dots for people is important. And right now during a pandemic is not, I don't think, the right time to push some of these issues through. Because of the pandemic, there are other ways for Governor Polis to say and for the city to respond in acknowledging that if there are people who are on the verge of being evicted, those processes can be stopped and people can be accommodated.
I want to cut in here. I'm thinking now, and I want to check with Joel, but I'm thinking that a text amendment, I don't know if that can go on the ballot.
City Council has the authority to adopt and change the zoning code.
Thank you. That's what occurred to me. Okay.
I just, I'm gonna go to Trisha next. I just want to say, I disagree that Polis is doing a good job taking care. He didn't house the people. The homeless count is getting worse. There's so many people on evictions, and he's committed to not continuing a moratorium on evictions. And so I'm not sure if looking to Polis for leadership is really the answer. So Trisha, you're next.
Well, I just wanted to respond to Adam's comment. You know, the 100,000 people, yes, we need to do something for them. Absolutely, without a doubt. And I don't think anybody denies that. But this is my concern, is that there's so many people in so many neighborhoods who are against this, that let's say this goes to planning and gets passed and goes in front of city council. And city council, so many city council folks say, we can't pass this because we are hearing from too many of our constituents that they haven't had time to digest this. We haven't had time to educate them. We haven't had time to reach compromises. They're people feel of unintended consequences, and then they don't pass it. That's 2 years of work scrapped. And it's saying, you know, and then what? Everything dies on the vine, and then we've achieved nothing. So I actually feel like if we can pause and give city council people the opportunity to reach out to all their constituents and educate them and hear feedback and
you know, if compromises need to be made, they're made, and a new resolution be put forward that everybody can get behind, then we have a chance of really helping the people who need it. That's would be my take on rushing this forward.
Okay, Christina, can we go back to the phone? Is there anyone on the phone that would like to make a comment? Okay, Christina, I think it's back to you then with the resolution on the floor.
Okay, yeah, I do think we should vote on the resolution. That's going to be a little tricky, but before we go there, I also think that each one of us needs to meet with our city council person. They have over the last year said, I don't want to worry about that now. That's like so far off. They really have to get up to speed on this as well. And I'm not sure that they are. So some of them are. And, you know, I just think each one of us has an obligation to chat with them and go back to our registered neighborhood organizations and discuss it with them. But I do think, I think we should go ahead, and it was seconded. So I guess I move to go to a vote.
Madam Chair, point of order.
Okay.
Can we, if this passes, does that set aside the previous almost identical set of things that were passed by ZAP and by the membership last week, or is it additive to it and thereby create considerable confusion?
That was my point.
This is Lou Raiders. Let me just address a couple of points of differences. And really what this last point is after talking to Councilman Hines and others on the Cherry Creek Steering Committee, you know, the ideas of what is most urgent and what can we get out more specifically to talk about and resolve, that the last bullet here is that if we truly, you know, not just to unbundle to adopt regulations or anything else, but if we unbundle this, to Tricia's point, we'd all talked about the fact that we don't want to scrap this. We want it to continue to evolve and be adopted as quickly as possible with full consideration and changes that might be made. But, you know, to this last point, if a council person meets with the district and then comes back as council and says, look, I believe I've heard the positive, I heard the negative, much to the same point of the ADU presentation this morning. That was a presentation to all of us about how much work that council person had done about an effect on their district. So give it to the council persons to say, I am satisfied that my people have been advised. Here is what I'm hearing from them. Let's go forward with the group living number right away, because that, for example, that is a really urgent thing to take into account when pandemic relief goes away. But that's a nuanced difference for some. But for the lawyers on the call, I think it is important. And for the, because this is really saying, not just consider unbundling, but let's just take them, unbundle them and vote on them separately. And then I think it will allow for quicker passage of each of them, but puts the obligation on each council person to be satisfied as to the education in their district.
My question still remains, Madam Chair. Do we have a parliamentarian who can tell us whether this sets aside our previous vote or adds to it?
In addition. Well, I don't know if that's a parliamentarian question. I guess I'm trying to protect INC's the intent of what we did last week by doing this again in a slightly different form. I think it's a good idea. You know, maybe Joel will say that he knows that our resolution from last Saturday, he knows what we meant, and he is going to talk to council about, you know, compromise, etc. But I am afraid that what we did last Saturday, which approved a resolution from June 27th, will be discarded.
Christine, I have a question. Could this be amended just to say that we'd like the same, that it reads the same, or I don't know. Is there a way where we can write this shorter that's saying we recognize the resolution was released the days before, after discussing with our members, we still believe that it holds true even with the new draft out?
You know, this is Lou Raiders. The problem I had with that, frankly, last week and now, is that, you know, we talked about getting rental regulations in place as a sort of condition of moving forward with the group living. And I don't think that's going to happen. I think that's huge. And I think that is frankly cumbersome to trying to get the group living proposal adopted. So, you know, I think that's more negative to trying to get that passed than this is.
So Lou, you would say that this supersedes what we went through passing through ZAP and through the membership, and if so, I would suggest as a friendly amendment that this should say so.
I don't disagree with you, sir. I'm just pointing out that what this difference is still needs to go to the delegates. So I think it's a way, if you recall from last week, there was an attempt to try to modify that proposed resolution to essentially take out that cumbersome requirement for getting rental you know, regulations in effect. And at least I looking at that think, oh my God, that could really tank that if that was a requirement. I think this is different, and I think it would be up for the delegates to determine whether this would supersede that, or whether, frankly, I think Chris had proposed some language. Again, this is just putting up, I would propose that this be put to the delegates on the, because this is a broader group of people, but put to the delegates for adoption in lieu of the prior resolution.
Okay, would we have to put those words in the resolution that this would supersede it? Should that go in there?
Yes.
Yes.
Wait, this is Tricia Schmidt. I'm confused. Just for a clarification question quickly. Why does, I'm not sure that there are a couple of different things in both of these resolutions. So I'm not sure one necessarily needs to supersede the other, right? Like the first resolution talked about debundling, which this resolution does. The second point of the previous resolution talked about a rental registry concurrent, which quite frankly, the city could say, yes, we're going to do that, but we're going to pass this in the meantime and we'll get back to that. So I don't feel like that provides any kind of pause button for everyone to understand what GLP means or rental registry means. And the third point being that, yes, broader outreach needs to be done. That was the third point in the previous resolution. I think this resolution takes that point and digs deeper and puts the onus on the council people, quite frankly, to go out and make sure their constituents have received notice and been educated and come back and say, yes, that's okay. It's not the onus being put. The previous resolution sort of said, we want to make sure Andrew Webb and company and the planning board have done what they've done, and they've already said they have. So I actually think this resolution is quite different than the previous resolution that was passed, but that's my 2 cents.
Does anybody else, I think we should vote on it. I don't think it hurts. If anything, it does, as people have said, move this into council's court. They have not been leading. They sit in the back at the meetings. I don't dislike them, but they have not been, except for Robin and at a couple meetings, Candy, they have not been really taking this to their constituents. So I say we vote on it. I know it's complicated to vote. You know, another alternative is we could put this in a letter, but that doesn't have the force of a resolution. Discussion?
I don't see any hands up, Christine.
Okay.
Oh, Lucia, you have your hand up?
Are we still proceeding?
I see Lucia and then Mary Jane.
Hi, yeah, it sounds like there's a lot of confusion and unclear. I put a motion forward that we table this until we can get clear, more concise language.
I would like to chime in if I could, please.
That's Michael.
This is Michael Henry from Neighbors for Greater Capitol Hill. I'm sorry, I'm very mentally and technologically challenged by Zoom. I was on the advisory committee, and I just want to tell everybody it's not been working for 2 years. It's now 2.5 years. And there have been numerous compromises that the advisory committee has agreed to, most importantly, reducing from 8 to 5 the proposal about unrelated folks living together. And the last thing I'd like to say is that there has just been an incredible amount of public outreach during these 2.5 years. And they've come to the ZAP committee numerous times. There were those very large forums in January and February.
We didn't get the package.
Well, and I'd really like to appreciate what Jason said a few minutes ago in the chat function, that neighborhood groups had every opportunity to discuss this and share it with their folks. And whatever resolution comes up, I'm going to vote no.
Okay, so we have a motion on the table from Lucia to table. Does someone want to second Lucia?
I second that. Adrian.
Okay, so there's no discussion. The motion to table goes according to the Robert's Rules fact sheet I have here to a vote. So we're going to figure out how this vote's going to go with those on the phone as well. Is there anyone here in this room that does not live in Denver?
Or on the phone.
Okay. Or on the phone. Christine, can you count how many individuals? I see 42 individuals here.
The people who are on the phone, I know 267 is Tom Mobley because he identified himself. The other people, if they're going to vote, need to say who they are. But I'll count everybody.
Well, it counts at the top for us. So I see 42. And then if we take out the people on the phone, we'll know how many people we have. And then
yeah, Tom Mobley. I'm going to rename him.
Lucia, did you not put your hand up, or do you have something more to say here? I saw your hand up.
I had my hand up just to say, and I put this in chat, that I think that the motion for the resolution was made and seconded prior to the motion to table it. So I'm not sure.
That's how tabling works. So they introduce the motion and then she's moving to table it while you're in the midst of that discussion.
Why don't we take the yes votes? Is that how you want to do it?
Yeah, we'll have, for those who know how to raise your hand, definitely raise your hand in the chat.
Did you raise your hand?
Forget. And this is a yes to table.
It's a yes to table this and stop with any resolution today. Okay.
We'll give it another minute or two.
I count 11.
And this is Charlotte Wenzenberg. I can't quite figure out how to do it in the chat. I don't see any place to vote there.
Under your participants, you click on participants.
I know, I did.
Do you want to table this? We'll take your vote verbally.
If you do participants, and at the bottom it says invite, mute, or raise hand.
Oh, that doesn't show, that's not showing.
I'm sorry, I don't want to interrupt here, but I want to be crystal clear. We are saying that the proposed resolution on the screen should be tabled for further discussion. Is that what we're voting on?
Yes.
Okay.
Wait, discussion.
Tabled for further discussion in another meeting, not today.
Okay. So my vote is going to be to send this resolution as is. So what do I do?
You'll vote no when we get to no.
Okay.
Is there anyone on the phone that would like to vote yes to tabling this?
Did you vote?
No.
Okay, I didn't understand.
I would. Michael Henry, yes.
I have 11.
I'm also voting. I'm also voting no.
12.
This is Tom Mobley on the phone. I would vote yes.
Or yes, I mean. What'd you say, Tom?
I would vote yes.
Yes to table this?
No.
Yes, yes to table these things. So 1, 2.
Charlotte Wenzenberg, I vote no.
I count 15 with Charlotte and myself and
Charlotte, no.
People are clear on what they're voting on. They're voting to remove this resolution.
No.
And if you raise your hand, you're voting yes.
The motion was to table until it can be made clearer.
Well,
yeah,
we can make it clearer in discussion, but if you table it to another meeting,
it's already on the floor and we're already voting on it. So.
Well, wait, we need clarification what we're voting on.
You're voting, the motion is to table this resolution that was presented, which will mean that we won't have further discussion and won't be sent to the delegates today.
And one of the problems with that is that there is a limited time period in which the committee is accepting feedback.
Yeah, I understand where you're coming from. There's no discussion here. We just vote when this motion is made. So a yes is to table. I've count 15, including the people on the phone.
Different now, so let's count again.
Okay.
Thank you.
No.
Hands.
This participants doesn't. We have to be in.
Okay.
I see 8 hands up plus.
I'm voting the other way, so I have to wait till we count the no's.
I see 9 plus 2 on the phone is 11.
Well, so Ian, you're on the.
I see 11. I see 11. Now that 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8,
There's
9.
2
There's
on
10 on the screen and 2 on the phone. Someone added in. That's 13.
And Tom Mobley, you're voting to table this and until some future time.
We need to figure out how to do the polling on here, y'all. We're going to figure out a better way to do the voting.
Let's just count this. I don't know a better way. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. And Ian, now I count 9. And then Mike Henry on the phone.
When I do Zoom for Baker, we have a yes and no button for people, but I don't see that here.
Oh, Lucia, maybe you can help us figure that out.
Honestly, it just popped up. I don't know if you guys need to update your Zoom or what, but ours, we have like a voting capacity.
Pay more money.
All right, well, I think INC would be in favor of paying a little more money to have this be easier. So.
Yep.
So do we
No,
have?
we don't pay any more money.
The American way.
11. That's what we need to figure out. There's either 10 or 11.
Let's go with
Michael
10 and move
Henry,
forward.
Michael Henry, or I think you're saying you would vote yes to table this, correct?
Did.
Yes.
And Tom Mobley,
He voted yes.
I want to make sure well, he's
Said
gone.
it like 3 times.
Lucia, he didn't vote 3 times.
He
Okay,
said it.
we'll count him. How's that?
That makes
He's gone.
10. It's
He's
10
gone.
then. It's 10 then. It's 10 and 10 in favor.
Okay.
And now if everyone can put their hands down and we'll put up the no's. Just give us a second. The number's still going up. Okay, I see 21 hands up.
Did you get yours?
Yes, I just put mine up.
And add me, please, because
Will you take a look at the chat for me, Christine?
to see if someone else is voting.
Yeah.
I'm voting yes. No, I'm voting no. I don't see any other votes. Okay. So
Okay.
22.
It's up to 23 hands online. You don't see any votes in the chat?
No, except mine and right here.
I think Paige is voting. Okay. The motion fails 10 to 24. And that puts us back in the discussion. If everyone could put their hands down, or
I'm going to lower all hands there. Okay, we're ready.
so you want to vote now, Christine, on yours?
Well, it's not mine. It's
Or I mean on this, yes, on this resolution.
yes.
All right, so will you read it?
Yes.
Out loud so everyone understands?
Resolved that additional time should be given, parenthesis, with timing taking into account how the pandemic is affecting residents of Denver, close parens, for further consideration of the proposal in order to allow council members to make sure their constituents are educated on the proposal and its implementation/effect, including specific outreach to communities of color. Further resolve that this process should seek to incorporate compromise language offered to address constituent concerns. Further resolved that provisions of the proposal should be unbundled to allow full consideration of each material aspect of the proposal, and when outreach and compromise is achieved to the satisfaction of council members, such portion should be adopted separately.
Cindy, do you have a point of order question? With your hand up? Oh, hands down, no, okay. All right, Christine, so then we'll call for yeses, nos, and then abstains. Oh, we didn't do abstains last time. Apologies, y'all.
We can just ask verbally, did anyone abstain from the last vote? Joel?
No, I'll have to.
Okay, I don't hear Joel, so maybe he's gone.
Okay. So a yes vote is to move this on to our delegates. If you could put your hands up, please.
No, it's the wrong. Okay. I'm voting yes for this.
Is there anyone on the phone who would like to vote yes?
There's a bunch of people. So, okay, it ends at 2022.
I see 22. Does that include you, Christine? Do you put your hand
No,
up?
I didn't vote yet. So, no, it doesn't. And somebody else just raised their hand, but I missed it. So let's count again. This is to move this resolution forward.
My total says 23, but your hand's not up. Are you voting yes or no?
I get the same 23 plus me, 24.
Is there anyone on the phone who would like to vote yes? Paige is voting in the chat as well. That's 25, and I don't hear anyone on the phone. Christine.
Okay.
All right, if everyone, Christine, can you put everyone's hands down, please?
Yeah.
We have 25 yeses.
Oh, Cindy, did you just? I see some hands that just went up. Was that a mistake, Steve Epler?
Christine, can you put all the hands down?
I did. But Pam Jiner's raising hers. That might be to say something. I don't.
I misread and didn't realize you could put them down.
Again.
Pam, are you putting your hand up too? Or did you just come to vote?
My hand is up to vote in favor of the resolution.
Okay, we already did that and counted it. Were you present when we counted 25?
I don't know, because you of what you said, you lowered all the hands. I meant to vote in favor of the initial thing. I think I did vote at the time that you totaled 25.
Okay.
And let me see if Pam's hand went down.
They did. They're all down.
Great.
Okay. Now can we get no votes? If you're voting no, raise your hand. Is there anyone on the phone? Mike Henry?
Yes, I want to vote no.
I see 7 plus Michael Henry on the phone is 8.
It's confusing. Sorry.
Abstentions? Can anyone just say verbally or write in the chat if they have an abstention? I see Joel. Okay. The resolution passes 25, 8, and 1. We'll send it to the delegates as a whole for the next monthly meeting.
Okay. And I think we'll put this up on the Denver Inc. website as the result of today's meeting so that people can get it out to their residents before the delegate meeting, which is a long way off and is right before the planning board. Thank you all for, oh, Tricia has her hand up.
Yeah, I just wanted to also say thank you to everybody for everyone's time this morning on a Saturday morning, and I think we missed our window of sunshine for the day. But also to make sure that you all get to your council people, whether it be yay or nay, but our council folks just need to hear from us. You know, a city only works if the council people actually hear from their constituents.
Agreed. And they have a lot on their plate. So can I just ask sort of informally, although people can raise their hands, are there people here who are interested in digging through the inconsistencies and the changes that at least I noticed when I was reading it, and maybe doing a meeting with Andrew, because Andrew has offered to meet with not just INC's group, but any group of residents who would like to chat.
I do that.
So if you have your hand up, I'll get your name down and we can find that list.
Who did?
Sure.
So Christine?
I just voted.
Okay. Yes.
Go ahead, Miles. Is that you?
Yeah. Christine, you mentioned we brought up a few of us bringing this to a vote instead of doing this as a text amendment. Do we have any forward movement on that?
Well, I thought about it and I recalled and then confirmed with Joel in this meeting that a text amendment is strictly within the purview
of the council.
I'm not sure it's strictly, and let's see. Let me just think about that. I know when we did the Olympics ordinance change, that was a vote, but it was an addition. I honestly don't know. Joel, are you barred from sending a text amendment? Can you clarify that to the voters?
First of all, I'm not an attorney. Secondly, my understanding is that council could refer anything they cared to refer to the voters.
Oh, okay.
And thirdly, a citizen initiative could propose something, as was done with green roofs, on any topic. Oftentimes those don't translate directly to the text because the people proposing them aren't writing exact regulatory text, but the intention could be initiated by voters.
Well, that we don't have time to do, but I guess I would make a motion then that we request that City Council bring this. Yes.
So you want to bring another motion right now? I just want to prepare for the voting, that's all.
That City Council, that we request, INC requests that City Council bring this to the voters. And I guess they can do it in, ideally.
Christine, they would only have until August 3rd, I believe, is the last date they can place something on the ballot for this year. So it would have to be for, I believe, next November.
Well, two things. We could write a letter as Inc., as this meeting, and just make a request, period, that City Council put it on the ballot because of the divergence of issues and opinions. Any thoughts on that?
I second that.
This is Steve Epler. I feel that INC should strongly support moving this to a vote by the constituents.
Who's the constituent?
A vote by the constituents. But
agreed.
A resolution in favor of it being passed out of council and put to a vote of the residents.
The voters are doing.
The hands up voting in favor of sending this, like we did with Tabor, to the electorate.
Christine, can you type up whatever your motion is and put it on the screen for folks and put the yes and no means on it?
Thank you, Miles.
Just for context, I just want to remind people that the city 10 years ago replaced the entire zoning code and the entire map through the regular legislative process voted on by council, and that was not referred to the voters. It was done with representative democracy. So make of that what you will, but the land use regulatory powers do rest with city council. You can request, of course, course, anything you care to, but that is who has the authority until they decide to refer it or voters change that.
Wait, until they what? Until they decide what?
To refer it.
Refer it. So they could refer these text amendments to.
Right. Just keeping in mind the context that the city council replaced the entire zoning code through the regular process, not by referendum.
Yes, and I'm thoroughly aware of that. And that's why part of my concern with replacing Article 11 without a process that's comparable to what we did in 2010 is a problem. Okay, can you see what I've typed? And make it, anybody have suggestions to make that clearer? Resolve that City Council refer group living amendments to Article 11.
I cannot see your screen, Christine.
Oh, you can't. Okay.
Share your screen.
So, Christine, just I have a question here. So we didn't add the superseding to the last one, and the first one talked about debundling. So which part of the debundling, or they both had debundling, which part of the debundling do we want to send to the voters?
Very good question.
Both of them?
Let me share this and then I can. So the way I've worded it is City Council refer amendments to Article 11 regarding the group living changes to Denver voters. That gives them the flexibility to debundle and send one at a time. So if they feel, for example, that community corrections needs to be dealt with yesterday, they can pull that out, refer that amendment to Article 11 to the Denver voters. People want to correct me, go right ahead. So, Sherry.
Well, excuse me, this is Michael Henry. I would think at least you should say Article 11 of the Denver Zoning Code.
Mm-hmm.
I have a question for you too, Christine, and just a thought. And then I see some hands are up. I'm not sure if those are ready to vote yes or not. You know, if you make this request, someone's going to have to run a yes campaign, because once they refer it, it's just on. You know, if we send this forward, is that committing INC to resources for this? Is it not? Just curious.
No, we can't address that right now. No, I don't think it commits us to running a campaign that costs money. No. So just let's look at the language and make sure. Where are my lawyer friends? Sherry Way. Council. Refer any amendments to Article 11 of the Denver Zoning Code regarding group living to Denver voters.
Christine, I see that Cindy has her hand up, and then Sherry as well.
Okay, I'm not seeing that, so thank you.
Cindy Sestrich, you want to say something?
No, I need to go back and put my hand down. Sorry.
Okay. Sherry Way, your hand is up. Stephen Epler, your hand is up. Tricia, your hand's up. So Sherry, do you have anything you'd like to say? Perhaps you can put all hands down then. Tricia, do you have anything? Stephen?
Yeah, I actually do. I have a question.
Okay.
So,
Go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry, Stephen. Go ahead. You were up before me.
This just makes it ambiguous as to which of the three separate parts needs to be referred to the voters. Frankly, I think they all do.
Should I change any to all? Sherry, are you going to help? Let me look at the participant list. Oh, okay. So you're leaving the calling on people to me, eh? Okay, Lou?
I'm not sure I was first in line on this.
Tricia
but
is. Tricia is, and then
I haven't been watching that.
That's okay. You're fine, Christina, no worries. I just had a quick question. Are we referring this to Denver voters for this election round, or are we saying it needs to wait a whole year? Because I have to be honest, these issues are super important. And if, and while I am aligned with the idea that it would be nice for the voters to have their opportunity on a ballot, if it has to wait a whole year, that leaves a lot of people hanging that, just doesn't seem to be necessary if we think we can solve this via the council, our council people reaching out and working through them. But so I'm just curious, what are we talking about? This election cycle, next election cycle? What election cycle are we talking?
Ian pointed out that it couldn't be this election cycle. So you're correct, it would be November of 2021. Or is there a municipal?
Stephen Epler, I have a comment. My feeling is that the makeup of the committees that initially got started on it, the duration of time they've been working on it, and the fact that it hasn't had better community acknowledgement and knowledge all argue in favor of it being deferred to 2021. Again, I favor supporting moving the group home aspect out of and considering it separately, because I think it's going to be more easy to reach consensus on.
I guess we're losing Ian. Sherry?
It's the Raiders that's next, right?
I don't know. I wasn't watching.
I'm sorry, Christine. I had a little family emergency. I had to walk away. Is my hand up inappropriately? It looks like it is. I apologize.
No, we're looking for feedback on whether to move forward with this second resolution that's up on the screen.
Yes, let's move forward.
This is Lou. I'm going to break with this. I really think that after this committee and has worked very, very hard on this for a while, my complaint is not that these issues should be taken to the voters. I think there is a huge time and expense of that process. And I mean, there's a reason that we vote for our council people. They are dedicated to listening to constituents and educating. My issue is not with the substance, and I think the need for resolving some of these issues of equity are way too important to try to put this to a vote of the people at this point in time. So I would not support that. Thank you.
Okay, very much.
So this is a tough one. I hear what Tricia.
I'd like to move to table this. Can I get a second?
I'll second it.
So it goes to a vote.
Okay.
So a yes vote, will you put this on the screen? A yes vote now is to table this. Can you put that up there, Christine?
Okay, you mean type it right in here?
Yeah, just so people can see it, because we ran into that problem last time.
Then I can't look at participants, so I'm taking that down again.
Okay.
Hold on.
And table the resolution to send it to voters. I see some questions in the chat here.
Didn't hear that.
I see some questions in the chat here. Should table just the last paragraph or the whole set of resolutions, Bill? It's just this to send it to the voters, this resolution that's being typed here on the screen. Oh, maybe you're on the phone. You can't see it on the screen. I'm sorry. Okay. So if you are voting to table this, vote yes now by raising your hand.
That looks.
Let's see. Do you see any in the chat? Is there anyone on the phone who would like to vote yes to table this?
This is Michael Henry voting yes to table.
I think I'll vote to table it too, following the discussion, but my hand isn't. So.
Okay, so you're raising your hand, Christine? That puts 20 to table. All right, can you put all the hands down?
Yeah. Think so.
I still see 7 up.
Yeah.
Including mine. I'll lower mine.
I can't do it right now.
Okay, I'm doing them individually. Okay, now can you raise your hand if you're voting no to tabling?
It's so hard to see.
And is there anyone on the phone who would like to vote no to tabling? Okay, I count 8 here. And then can we get abstentions? Okay, 1, 2, 3. I see 4 hands raised. Would anyone verbally like to abstain? Okay, motion to table passes 28 to 4.
20 to 8, 4. Okay.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. Well, are we finished then?
Yeah, I would say that wraps up the meeting.
Abstain.
Want everyone to check out the sites that were listed for safe camping sites. Many of them are parking lots. I believe 7 of the 11 are asphalt parking lots. Really concerns me with my public health background. Higher ozone levels, the heat and temperatures cause more ozone as well with this pandemic, and then also stormwater management because we're entering monsoon season in August. So, the flash flooding. So check that out. Make sure you look at that list and you contact your council member either way if you support it or you don't, or if you have a better idea.
Ian, quick question for you. I know the mayor asked certain city council people to propose sites. How many were there and how many actually responded?
I believe he only asked the council members that said they would like them in their community.
Yeah,
I don't know that total. I don't know that total off the top of my head, and I don't know how many were.
Well,
but we can find that out. We could email it.
Hey, Ian.
Yeah, 4
I have those
submitted.
names. So there were 8 city councilors who sent in a letter for the safe outdoor sites, and only 4 city councilors responded of those 8. So Councilwoman Sandoval, Councilwoman Sandoval, Councilwoman Torres, and Councilman Hines were the only ones who suggested sites in their district. And then there were 4 other council members who said they supported safe outdoor spaces, but did not support them in their district.
Awesome. Thank you, Adam. That's great information.
And that has not been resolved. The people who live in GES feel that using the Coliseum parking lot at National Western, first of all, it's environmentally, it's a Superfund site, but more than that, there's a whole list of issues that they have with being overburdened. You know, the Globeville got the tiny home village. There's quite a bit of, I would say, sentiment against putting that site there. And I can sympathize. I mean, it sounds like it has to be done, but every time we go to do it, people say, wait a minute, we already have X, or we don't want it. And it's a very tricky question. So I don't know how to resolve it. Ian has suggested that each area, like, for example, Lowry, Cheeseman Park, suggest one park to hold a small number of people. And he wants to see how many sites altogether, Ian?
Well, it's not just me that's calling on it, but I believe that it makes it easier for people to have jobs and hold employment if they can commute from close to their job. There are a lot of unemployed people. You know, I work in the events industry who have expertise in running campsites safely, electric, water, waste management, all of it. And we're unemployed right now. And I think that there's an awesome opportunity to put us to work, to ensure these safe campsites happen safely, and to pick places that aren't stormwater, again, heat islands, that I think are just not doing better. We talk about doing better, and we have a history of people in parks going all the way back. There's images of City Park to 1914. And so I personally think there are better solutions than one massive site that makes it difficult for these people to find a regular lifestyle. And
yeah,
I want to invite anyone. We're doing a cleanup of several of the encampments, including Maury Middle School, and providing water tomorrow at 8:30 at Benedict Fountain Park. I'll drop it in the chat.
That would be great. And then can you save the chat? Because I don't know how to do that. So, but I think part
Chat
of
should automatically, if you elected to record this, which it looks like it's recording, and you're saving it in the cloud, the chat will be saved with it.
we're not saving it in the cloud. We were told we can't do that on an INC's system. So we're saving it, I guess, on my computer. I don't know.
The cloud is not on INC system. The cloud is in Zoom's cloud.
Okay, I'm following instructions from Maggie. So,
where is the list of the proposed camping sites?
Look in the
I
chat.
put a link to it in the text, in the chat.
So one of the things that we might want to do in August is discuss the housing in general, because I think a lot of the resistance that people have to the safe open spaces and the issues that are coming up is that they don't see the city working in a coherent way to provide housing. So we're just always backpedaling, even on the evictions. We got to get ready, and we got to have more places for people who are evicted, rather than taking this head on and saying, no, we're going to stop the evictions. We're going to make sure we have money so people don't ranks. And we're going to put the pressure on Polis City. Doesn't lift the eviction ban. But I think it would be a good discussion for August. Do people want to do that? It's a big one.
Christine, we, INC, spent an enormous amount of time addressing this on at least 4 different occasions, most recently a couple of years ago. We passed almost unanimously as neighborhoods a motion to encourage, essentially demand, that the city spend whatever resources it was going to take to deal with our homeless issues, or the issues of people suffering homelessness. To me, the issue is not what should we do now, it's what should we do to get traction to get the things that we have all agreed need to be done. And I would strongly suggest that that relates to the issue of whether INC has sufficient traction to do that. We need to work out a way to get what we say done, or stop saying it.
I agree, but I see no progress on a big chunk of money being spent by the city to keep people in apartments. And so the problem keeps growing. Robin is working on one thing over here. We have some motels for COVID homeless. It's a very fragmented process. Irene Aguilar is in Nest. Britta Fisher is in Host. I don't think the city is doing what you say we've charged them to do. Is it just money? That's my question.
Well, money is supposed to be coming for homeless services in the form of a sales tax here in just like a week or two to be sent to the ballot.
That's something.
And they passed a $100 million bond. It's inclusionary zoning. We know we continue to run into barriers, and this is a state law. And we've talked in this committee before about using INC resources during the legislature to advocate for inclusionary housing ordinances.
At the state level.
Yes, because that's where it's inhibited, and that's where we can get every single parcel to participate.
I'm simply pointing out the city is very, very fragmented. And I think that builds resentment, Adrian, is what I'm picking up in talking to people. Like, why should we, when we see more and more people living in tents? Where is their permanent housing? Many of them have been offered and haven't been able to take because they have dogs, as Robin says, or they have a partner, or they don't trust the system. So that needs to be changed. All I'm saying is that I don't see it being resolved, and I'd like to see it being resolved. And if you're mad at me, which it sounds like, for raising this when we've already said it, I'm sorry.
May I recommend to everybody that it be put on the agenda for the next ZAP committee? If it looks like there will be a sales tax increase on the ballot in November, that should be something that we really could try to make an effort on.
I support that being on the agenda. But I wonder if it's better to come to a meeting as a whole. I would imagine that they would like to get on our calendar maybe in September. I can reach out to Robin Kanichafis. I know that there are people who are putting a yes together. She won't be able to participate in that in her role, but I know that she knows the people who are bringing it forward.
Yeah, talk about a moneyed campaign. That's going to be a big one. So any other ideas for future August meeting? I hear Ian saying maybe the sales tax should go to the delegate meeting before we close.
Okay. Well, thank everyone for staying on extra time.